Here we go. So I think we are live.
I hope we are.
I hope we're live. Okay, so welcome to Thursdays with Culture Talk. I am Teresa Agresta. I'm one of the co-founders of Culture Talk, and I'm excited to welcome back to our conversation one of our Culture Talk certified partners today. So Mike Taylor, welcome to our little conversation.
Thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a chance to give a little background on yourself as we set up today's conversation. But before we dig in, I just wanted to welcome our viewers, welcome people who are joining us here today to talk about this topic. And I love your tagline in the back about branding changing everything.
Yes.
And give you a little clue about some of what we're going to discuss today. And to share this journey we begun in 2023. So Culture Talk has been looking at 6 critical paths, and we are in the midst of taking apart all things brand and experience and creating clarity around how do you use archetype and how do you use the framework and the patterns that the Culture Talk system brings to bear to really bring structure and depth and add design and, a lot of clarity to conversations around brand and experience. So that's why we've got Mike here. And Mike, I'd love you to dig in a little bit and tell us about your background, why you're here. I know you're one of our partners. It's been 2 years.
Oh, it has. It seems like it just started. It's so fun. So I'm Mike Taylor. I've been in the business of branding about 30 years now, and we calculated, we added all the brands I've worked on, and it's 385. I know. Well, it helps when you brand people. So just a couple things that make me unique. I'm actually trained as a scientist in my undergraduate. And then I joined and worked at Procter & Gamble for a very long time. And my first decade in branding was spent in finance and global and strategy, which was really exciting. And that's when I moved into branding and marketing. So I got to work on such brands that everybody hears of every day, like Old Spice and Oil of Olay, and laid out all the groundwork for the Gillette buy. And then I went out to California, worked in Neutrogena, Kimberly-Clark, and then I came back here to work on a startup. Here is Cincinnati, and that led to my next phase of work, which I've always loved, working at the agency in strategy. It was the Interbrand agency. That was incredible. And after that, I put out my shingle. So I consult in a couple. Our practice is about growing our clients' business, empowering their people. We use the science of branding and the art of emotional storytelling. And so over the last 10 years, because dear friends said, hey, I think I have to have a resume now. I'm like, no, you need a brand. So what we created here is a patent pending approach to building a brand for a professional. I was a little longer winded, but
yeah, no worries. So I'm hearing a couple things out of that, Mike. One is this left brain, right brain aspect of this. So knowing that you spent all these years in finance, is always so intriguing to me. And hearing you talk about it as the sort of the science and the art, and bringing those two pieces together, I think is so, it makes working with archetype so successful. Understanding that there is a strategy, a process, a framework, the ability to measure like a scientist would.
Yes.
And then deliver against what you've measured, and that it only makes it stronger, that it only enhances our sense of creativity when we're able to use kind of like the left brain, right brain together.
I think, yes, the most creative people I've run into in my career have been that ability to go back and forth.
Mhm.
I really believe that. I speak a lot to this. Your brand is your best asset. And if you're a professional, this is probably your strongest long-term financial asset.
Yeah.
Your professional brand is the asset that you're seeking to get return on.
Yeah. And just like we talked about, with corporate branding, what feels intangible can become tangible when you're able to measure it.
Right.
And to add that level of analysis around what's happening. And so I always think that's so cool. And I also, I'm recalling a conversation you and I had a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
where this emphasis on professional brand. I really want to draw attention because you've used the term professional brand when I think so many times we hear about personal brand.
Absolutely.
And so tell me the line that you draw, the distinction you draw, and the differences that you see between when somebody is creating a strong and effective professional brand versus, what they think they might need to do to get that personal brand in shape.
So the reason I do that is, if you remember, what is it, 15 years now since Tom Peters wrote Brand You? So the idea that a person could be a brand has really been embraced. With the rise of social, the biggest personal brands we know are mostly via the platforms, correct? So
Right.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that model requires you to be constantly creating content, constantly bringing yourself up. And that's very different than how a career in business tends to be. Now, there are some amazing influencers and creators that are professional, but really, from a professional standpoint, it is your brand that represents the best you have to offer in your either industry, your function, your company. And that the reason I say professional versus personal, I want them to realize it's this incredible asset, and it's built in a different time frame. It's not constant churn like we have to do in a content driven. This is about choicefully throughout your career using this asset and having it there so others can find it, but it doesn't have to be treated in the same way of likes and reshares and all of that.
Interesting, because so much of that world, which maybe for this conversation, we'll say that's personal branding, right? So that's really the personal aspect of it.
Yes.
It can be really exhausting.
Yes.
So the idea that as a professional, you need to maintain the, cadence of that and get caught up in the emotional highs and lows of whether the content or the, what you've put out there is performing. So what you're suggesting is take a different view on it. And that changes, that changes everything. It changes what we might do, where we might do it, how we might go about creating that professional brand.
Absolutely.
I feel like I can breathe out a little bit.
Well, and it is, it's meant to be this, in a personal digital world, it's like this. We've got to keep going. So you're constantly posting. If you think of it as an asset, you're building it over time. And one thing leads to another. And you may say, oh, well, I'm not on Instagram, but where you are, you're places like LinkedIn, but more importantly, you're in meeting people and being introduced to people and being in a project where you're going to be working with a team for a year or two. All of those, in my mind, are the great media that builds a strong professional.
Yeah. I go back, Mike, for years before starting. So our current business Culture Talk, we were, before even starting our previous business, Allegory Studios, which was a brand development business. So I lived and breathed that world. I spent close to 10 years in an architecture firm, and I was the PR person. And so my job was to build the professional brands. This was pre-social media, practically pre-websites in the 90s mostly. And we did that the old-fashioned way, right? So I'm curious, my job was to get professionals speaking engagements, to ghostwrite articles and get them placed into professional journals. All of those things, take the work and have it photographed and get projects published that would build the brand, essentially, of those professionals whose work I represented. And so it kind of feels like that. But today we have different platforms and mediums through which we get it out. Maybe you can liken that. Like, how would somebody who came up in a more traditional setting use that? What would they do today, from your perspective?
Well, first we'd have them build the brand. So we'd say, what's your promise? What are you saying? This is who I am, and here's how I can help you. Because branding is all about how do you help others? How do you improve lives? It's about service. I always ask my clients to think about their head and heart. So what do you do really good that very few people know how to do? That kind of becomes your logical side of your story. But then is your why. And the why is always what we care about, right? It's the emotional element that connects. So bringing those two together. Now, that was a long-winded precursor, so I'll be careful now and answer the actual question, right?
We got to come back to that. I'm not going to leave that one alone. We got to come back to that one too.
Yeah. The wonderful thing about the world we live in is it's the playing field has leveled. I don't have to talk to an editor to get my article placed. I can post it. I can post it on, I may have a personal website, but I can also post it in any of the social medias. LinkedIn, for all of us grown-ups, as I say, is an incredibly powerful channel. But just sharing things that in professional branding, your network is everything. So you already know the people you know. Share with them every once in a while what you're doing, and you'd be surprised how connected and excited for you they are. And sometimes they'll share it with others, which is, you and I both know, the best kind of marketing.
Yeah.
So
third-party affirmation.
Third-party affirmation.
Yeah.
And that's the simple way. Okay, is this something that's happened? I should share this, or I should put this somewhere so others can see.
Right. And what I always say to people as well is the beautiful part of the way we do it today is that it lives on.
Yes.
So it used to be out there and then disappear over time.
Right.
Of course,
Right.
our things do get buried over time, but
Right.
it is findable, it is searchable, and it lives on.
Yeah. And the advantage here is, think about, because what happens? They Google your name. And what's going to come up? And everything will come up. So it's kind of interesting that if you realize that, so each investment you make over time leads to that great return, because looking you up gives you the new opportunity when somebody says to you, I have this. I thought you might be able to help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I want to go backwards just a little bit here to that head and heart piece. Yeah. And let's talk about archetype. Let's talk about how do we uncover the heart? How do we get to the unique expression of who a professional is? Because that really drives a different kind of professional brand. Now we're taking the logical, right? Which is the way we kind of always approach things, but we're imbuing it with the emotional and that unique blueprint of who am I as a human. And we're putting those two pieces together. So secret sauce here, right?
Yeah. I think somebody out there, Jen McGrath is out there today. And Jen is the person, when I was in the agency, turned me on to archetypes. So the hardest thing about branding yourself is you have to be outside yourself to see yourself. Or the old line is when you're in the jar, you can't read the label.
Yeah, I love it.
I know, so do I.
Cynthia loves to say, is like, it's very hard to see your backside in the mirror.
Right. And so you throw in, here's what I've been educated, here, you go to the things that you can think of. But your brand there's a deeper, richer story. And I grant you, it's kind of scary to talk about saying, above all things, this is why I do what I do. This is why it matters to me. And most people get really nervous about that. And I'm always like, but that's what we love the most about you. So That's where the authenticity comes from. And archetypes, I mean, you can't get a better way to start seeing inside your own jar. Archetypes, all of a sudden, you're worrying about yourself, but you know the people you want to talk to, and archetypes helps you shape the character you are in their story. So I always laugh because one of my archetypes, which I struggled with putting it in there, was the marriage of the hero and the jester. And when I thought about that, that became part of my heart story. And what I see when my clients, I use the culture archetype in everything I do. So when a client comes to me for professional branding, that's the first thing we do. And it is mind and heart opening. And that's what I think the archetypes do.
Yes.
All of a sudden you can go, oh, I'm this. And all the people that know you will go, yeah.
Of course you are. Yeah. Right.
That's the best.
Yeah. And I love the way the speed, right? We like to say it drops you in. It's almost like I love your analogy about the jar, because I'm always talking about it like a container. It kind of drops you into this container that brings clarity, does it in a way that's really quick, gets that outside affirmation that indeed this is how you are perceived and viewed, and gives you permission to live into it, right? So I'm curious for you, like for your professional brand, I know you just launched a new website and it's fantastic, absolutely brilliant branding work. So kudos. But I'm just curious, how did that jester show up for you? In that re-experiencing,
because I don't love the word, because I always feel like I need a pointy hat and some bells. But here was the difference. For me, when I finally decided to say, I've been always given work by referral. And when I really realized this is what I want to do the next 10 years, I said, it's time for me to do what I do for my clients and sit down and do the brand. And my three are creator, hero, jester. And the creator spoke to me in ways that I never thought of my brand that way. I'd always thought of myself as I help transform business people's lives. But creator is another way to think about me. And it was building these steps, building these elements, that there's a process and a work here to create something new. But hero and jester. So here's how it goes. Branding is really tough work. And it doesn't matter if we're doing a business or a person. And at times it's just really difficult. You're playing with your head and heart. You get all frustrated, and there's nothing as fast or as fun as a good laugh, a good joke, a remembrance that we're doing this for all the good things, and it snaps us back. So my jester is the one that I get to play when people are starting to struggle and they're stuck. The jester is the one who unsticks people. So you taught me to embrace that, and that shows up all the time now with my clients.
That's awesome. I love that. And you, with your ability to now even say to them, so it's like you're becoming the model for them, to show them how these patterns that you're walking beside them. I've been through this process. Here's what I discovered. Here's how you can, lean into these and embrace who you are. And I love what you said as well about when you do that, everybody else is just applauding because we saw it anyway. We were able to identify that in you.
For me, what changed in my professional brand was an element of authenticity that I had avoided. For example, I'm a science and a finance and a strategy guy, as well as a brander, and those are serious, right? So I always kind of kept the jester piece far away. Once I started incorporating who authentically, what drives me, it's just perfect. I play at a different level.
Yeah, well, and it also completely differentiates you as well. So, I mean, isn't that really one of the key things that branding is supposed to do? Allow someone else who is interested in working with you, at whatever level. Maybe they're hiring you, maybe they are putting you on a project team, or maybe it's, you're being placed in front of a client, whatever the case may be. And they want to know, like, authentically,
Mhm.
What's showing up? What am I getting here? And is the way that you package yourself and represent yourself going to be a reflection of the experience I have when you're, working on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. For me, what has happened is there's just a breathing in the room. Uh, it creates a moment where I kind of say, here's my heart, or here's my head, and why I do this. I think the biggest driver is, and I know this, you and Cynthia feel the same way. I think people get into branding because great brands are of service for others. Brands exist to help their audience in a certain way. And for me, what's happened is that just makes that right at the forefront. So you're no longer, you've got all those thoughts.
You're not holding it back.
Right. And you got a million, the voices in our head are strong and not all of them are working for you. What I think it does is it shows people the level you want to work with them at, the level you want to play at, and the level they're capable of as well.
Yeah. Right. And it's an invitation for them to be authentic too. Especially when you're when you're at the table offering that, as part of your service. I want to bring us to another distinction. And we've talked about this on LinkedIn before. And that is the service that you call ambassador branding. And I think this is just levels, like layers, right? So we have the organizational brand, the corporate brand, whatever you want to label that. We talked last week about the employment brand. How is that a reflection of what it feels like to be working in this environment? And we talked about this, the personal responsibility that comes with clarity and communication around your professional brand.
Yep.
How do we tie them together? And
Sure.
tell us about ambassador branding and how that looks.
Absolutely. I always like to say that I stumbled on it, and I did. I was
and I'm going to give you more credit than that. Okay. You're bringing this idea forward.
Okay. So here's the idea at its simplest. You have your own professional brand. Your organization, company, team has a brand as well, but the magic happens when you co-brand them together. So that's it in the sentence. But I was thinking about co-branding. I think I have another word that helps people as well. So I was thinking of all the great co-brandings, and one of the best examples, of course, is designers and celebrities and retail. So, like Alex Wang for H&M, and I was just looking at Bad Bunny for Adidas, and the language they use is a collaboration. So not just co-branding, but it's a collaboration of bringing two business assets, the professional and the business, and then the company together and finding that synergy.
Yeah, interesting. That kind of goes back to one of the things we talk about, when we talk about culture, but in terms of archetype and measuring pattern, it's like chemistry.
Right.
So you're literally bringing two unique things together that changes the chemistry of it, and it creates something different.
Absolutely. And I just want to say how important what you've given me over the last 2 years has helped me be able to do that offering at another level, the level that it really was meant to, which is there anything more respectful or valuable than your company saying to you, you know what, you're incredible. We'd like to invest in you and have you go through a journey and get really clear on your professional brand. That's a great gift, but it also recognizes what each person means, right? So when you have that, and how do you do that, right? Well, it first helps if you know your culture of the company, right? So that's the game changer that you and Cynthia have created. All of a sudden, we can look at the soup everybody's going to swim in, right? So then we get the personal brand, and of course, archetypes are one of the key steps. Then once you know that, you're able to look at the company brand and go, oh, And the company has archetypes as well and their heart story. So you have your heart story, they have theirs. And now that you can look at them equally, it happens so naturally. It's always my favorite part because people go, of course, it's
That's right.
this. I have like, oh my God, we have the same value, or I'm really good at what the company's known for doing. And that light bulb goes on.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's a different conversation.
Yeah. Or, I mean, conversely, Mike, somebody they recognize their really valuable role as the devil's advocate.
Yes.
I serve to hold space for, an opinion that might stretch us, that might, help us to stay safe, that might help us to grow, because I'm willing to play devil's advocate and I add value in that way. And I love when everyone else in the room turns and looks at that and that devil's advocate and says, thank you.
Right.
Because without you, we would drive so fast and hard down this road that we might go astray, that we might, have some bad outcomes. So thank you for your contribution. And we're sorry we've been so hard on you.
Well, and it goes one step further. I have a client and they've done this with me for over 5 or 6 years. And we were laughing because I'm like, you have 0 rebels. You got none. And this year in the new hire list, and it's a different generation. It's Z now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are 2, and they're like so excited that they make sure they have that voice now. It's huge. I also think it really works a lot of the times I'm branding businesses where there's not much of a branding or marketing organization, right? So usually, since I'm doing the work with the leadership team, the first step is let's look at everybody's archetypes and see who we are. Because then to go into the company brand, that's also a great way for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, if you have a story of an individual, you talked a lot about personal, the working with individuals on a professional brand and somebody's experience in walking through the process and looking at archetype and maybe someone that has had a chance to have some outcomes as a result of it.
Here's an individual. She is brilliant at looking at people and organizations and using that as a way to make things better. Okay. In essential, and she's doing that in the context of a company that's rapidly expanding from the town, the community they're knowing in, to all of the surrounding businesses. So, oh my God, I got to build up staff. I've got to build up processes. I've got to set up education. And are people having what they need to drive the business? And so what was really fun was we added the words process geek to her title. Like when you start your brand, you start with your opening.
Yeah.
And it was just such an aha for everyone in the organization. Everybody's kind of annoyed because she gets that. They can't use that language. But she's been promoted 4 times. And it's almost just because everybody knows what she's really good at.
What she's really good at. Yeah.
Where's her superpower? Which I think archetypes is the way to see that. None of us see our gifts. We assume everybody else has our gifts, right? Because for us, they're easy. It's easy for her to look at an organization and a business process and go, oh, move this over here and then we'll do that. For the rest of us, we're sitting there. No, I'm staying up late. I'm working. That's the beauty of the archetypes, in seeing yourself and recognizing your own talents.
Yeah. And I know what that speaks to, what you just shared there too, in terms of the application of language to it.
Right.
And that's the branding piece, right? That's the creator in you, and that's the creative aspect of this science and art project. But when we hear those words, process geek, we all get it.
Yes.
So you started with a framework of archetype that identified, how she's showing up. By applying the language over that, we can come to a quick, I get it, I understand. And she's got some ownership of that instead of it being A, nebulous, and B, something, like maybe not everybody wants to be, but she can now be very proud of
Mhm.
being the process geek.
Well, and it's
So,
really funny when you think of her archetypes. It was guardian, which is, sorry, bad use. Caregiver.
Caregiver, right?
Caregiver. So all about what people need. How do they grow? How do you advise? Sage. And hers is all of that. When we get into that ability to lay out processes, etc.
Details and
right.
Yeah.
And then ruler. And it's just such an interesting
systems.
Right.
Yeah.
And leading others, taking on the responsibility themselves for others. So yeah, that's a
nice
example. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Mike, anything else to share as we wrap up? We've had such a great conversation. I can't believe we've been talking for a half hour already.
Sure. Couple quick things.
Yeah.
Make sure you do culture talk.
Make sure you do culture talk.
I've been doing, I was doing archetypes long ago. The level I get to play at now is completely different. And if anybody's interested, on my website, MikeTaylorConsulting.com, there are a couple things they can do. There's a short video that explains what ambassador is and shows the process. Great. And the archetypes. And then there's also an ebook on it. And feel free to download both. They're in the resources section of my website. So if you want to learn more, you can do that, or you can give me a call. You can get a hold of me on the website, and we'll set up a call.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We really appreciate at Culture Talk having partners like Mike who bring a depth of experience to the work that they do, and then ratchet it up a couple notches by applying the Culture Talk framework. Absolutely. And so if you're somebody who's involved in brand, experience, employment brand, or any of the other critical paths that we're going to continue exploring this year, if you're working on mergers and acquisitions, if you are evolving cultures and helping companies to transform and shift, or if you're working in leadership and coaching individuals and teams, all of these are paths that we'll continue to explore. So we have a certification program. Mike has referenced that. We have our next cohort kicking off March. It starts the first Tuesday in March. I think it's the 7th. And so we'll post a link underneath this recording for you to check that out as well. And if you'd like to join and be in the company of a fantastic international network of professionals, including Mike, we encourage you to check it out and to consider joining us. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you and give you more information. So thanks for being here, Mike. As always, love our conversations.
Thank you. Thank everybody who's listening.
Yep, absolutely. Enjoy your Thursday. Thanks for coming.
Take care.
Bye.